Katherine Salvador is from the Escuela Superior Politécnica del Litoral. Her talk is about applying principles of adult learning in a higher education setting, reflections on my experience with the andragogy theory and practice. She's an experienced EFL university professor, teacher trainer, researcher, and academic consultant. She holds a master's in TFL and has presented her research studies in several national and international conferences. She is currently preparing her presentation for the ICE, which will be held in Ireland in April.
Okay, thank you very much for this nice presentation. It's a pleasure for me to be here to share with you my research on results and reflections on my experience with andragogy. In my presentation, I will cover the following items. I will start by telling how I got to know andragogy, and then I will shortly share some aspects on how the term andragogy started to be used in the frame of adult education or adult learning. Then I will explain the research methodology of this study before pointing out how my teaching practice was influenced by my encounter with andragogy. Finally, you will see the results and conclusions followed by my final reflections. The university where this research was held in has several departments that provide educational service and training to the teaching staff. One of them are CISE and the CTI. Both are concerned about improving quality in education throughout assessment, training, and the development of new tools to be used in education. My professional background before I became a university professor was teaching young learners and teenagers. So my move to young adults obliged me to look for ways to suit my teaching practice to this new context. In 2007, I heard of andragogy for the first time, and even I was not sure what it was about, I knew attending to the training on andragogy principles and course design was going to be helpful in my teaching performance. Many sources state that the term andragogy was used for the first time by the German high school educator Alexander Kapp in 1833. His intention was not to define a new theory, not the term, but to use it to explain and expand Plato's theory of lifelong learning, which entails the necessity of adult education through experiences and reflection. There is no evidence of the use of this term until the early 20th century, when Eugene Rosenberg referred to it as elements of the curricula and in adult education, which include professors, methods, and philosophy. Since then, several authors and researchers have developed the theory of andragogy as an art, science, or practice of adult education. The definitions have evolved widely according to the variety of contexts. For example, in North America and Europe, it was used to refer to the need of professionalization. And in Latin American countries, we can find the Brazilian Paulo Freire referring to it when talking about educating illiterate adults. Finally, it was the UNESCO which suggested the use of term andragogy instead of pedagogy when talking about adult education. During my training on andragogy, I found the works of the Venezuelan doctor in andragogy Alcalá, which influenced my new perspective on higher education. The key points I reflected on as necessary to be included in my teaching practice were lifelong learning, principles of participation and horizontality, synergy, thinking, self-management, life quality, and creativity as important components to reach the adult learner's self-fulfillment. After reflecting on my own teaching practice by that time, I got awareness of a change in my course planning, so I decided to adjust some aspects of my course, aligning them to these principles. During this reflective process, I wanted to know whether my students were able to perceive some principles of andragogy in my course, so I decided to conduct a descriptive qualitative research. The participants were 22 undergraduate students from different degrees who were enrolled in a semi-intensive intermediate English course. The course was 6 weeks long, from Monday to Friday for 3 hours each day. By signing in a consent form, the students agreed to participate in a survey and interviews which allow me to collect data on their perceptions of this course. The information was tabulated and used, as well as the information on my own observations and journey. The main aspects I intentionally include in my course were a move from being a teacher to becoming a facilitator. I had to recognize my previous experience with young children and teenagers had influenced my teaching practice, which was strongly featured by being too motherly and dominant. I was also conscious that I had to give more attention to my learners' individual needs, background, previous knowledge, and learning styles so that I could facilitate enough more effective tools to help them in their learning process. I also got to know that I have to provide my learners more opportunities to interact by promoting participation and horizontality to create a better and more effective learning environment based on respect, communication, and interaction. Providing a proper assessment and feedback was also one aspect I wanted to consider in my course, as I wanted my learners to take an active and responsible role in their own progress. Now the results I could collect from the interviews and surveys were. This is an overall view of the participants, and as we can see, most of them were students aged 21 to 25 years old. I consider important to know the students' background and their prior experiences, so I got information about the courses they had taken before and their situation. I thought I was not going to get relevant information from the students who were taking English for their first time in their studies, but I received some comments from them comparing my course with their other courses from their degrees. As you can see, the participants of this study were very varied in the degrees they came from, because this is an interfaculty English program. In my move from a teacher to a facilitator, I got some interesting comments on the students' perception on their active role as responsible of their own learning process, which was my intention in the planning of the course. Here you can read some of these comments. Regarding participation and horizontality, I found out that the participants could perceive it and enjoyed interacting and having space to express themselves. Something that worried me was the fear of losing my students' respect because of horizontality. But my students also commented they felt a mutual respect along the course, which made me feel more comfortable and less worried about my fears. In my intention to make my students have an active role in their own learning process, negotiation was important for me, and the students commented on the agreements we had as a group and the democracy in the class. I got some important comments from my students about their perception of the assessment as I provided them opportunities to self-reflect on their own progress. I could notice they got responsibility of themselves and tried to find ways to make a better use of the tools I facilitated to them. They also made adjustments like taking more time to study English and a better organization to meet the agreed deadlines. proper feedback, and monitoring was perceived as beneficial in their learning process. It also gave a sense of confidence of the lecturer's skills and knowledge. I got information on the strengths and weaknesses of the course, and I found important features that were perceived by the students. I also got some important information about the aspects of the course I needed to work more in, and I described them as the weaknesses of the programs perceived by the students. So as you can see there, the strengths my students perceived were interaction, good use of didactics, motivation, patience, good assessment, and they felt it was right and fair. That is one of the main complaints of the students in our university. They say that most of the professors sometimes are unfair in the assessment. Creativity of the method and material, proper feedback and revision, empathy of the group, and a sociable environment. The weaknesses made me aware of the things I have to work more on. In conclusion, I found out that teaching young adults is totally different to teaching young children and teenagers. So I have to move into it. And giving young adults the power and making them responsible of their own learning process is important because that makes them autonomous, independent, and lifelong learners. How can we get to do it? By allowing them to make choices, to interact, and to self-reflect. The synergy in the process also promotes a more pleasant learning experience, and I would like to add here for both the students and me as a teacher. My final reflections are only short comments on the main aspects I think were relevant in this new course planning. I would like to end my final reflection by telling that this reflective research has encouraged and challenged me to keep improving quality in my teaching practice for the benefit of my students, my university, and for my self-fulfillment and enjoyment. Thank you very much. You have any questions? Yes?
I'd like to thank you for your presentation. I have just a question about moving from the teacher to a facilitator. I bet that, there are some problems, especially when delivering courses to big to huge numbers of students. I myself know the situation in Algeria, since you have, for example, in one class, 400 students to deliver a conference. So moving from the role of a teacher to a facilitator can be sometimes very hard. And also we have constraints in order to finish the program and to finish the whole planning of the courses. So how can you do that by being at the same time a facilitator?
Thank you for your question. This is for you. Okay, in order to answer your question, when you were saying we have big groups, I was thinking about our in Ecuador reality. We said big groups because we have 35 to 40 students. So I won't complain anymore about having big groups. Okay, let me show you one of the ways. Okay, this is one of the tools we use to facilitate tools to our students to help the construction of their own learning process. This is what we call the CISE website, where all our teachers have access to and our students also. Here we have a whole description of the syllabus, the information like the course policies. Okay, Here you have the course objective, the policies, and the main points of the materials the students can get to. But the facilitation of tools are delivered through this way. They can access through a lot of sources and material by clicking on the links that we have selected as a English team, and we also provide them opportunities to get tools like PowerPoint presentations, specific troublesome points of the language. For example, first conditional with examples, explanation, and opportunities for them to do. We also provide them some links that they can use to helping them in build their progress. And finally, we also create discussions through forums where they have to use the selected parts of the language in order to contribute with the classroom knowledge. So I think it would be helpful if you can have something like this. The option here is to make your students be aware that they are responsible of their own learning. So the teacher is not the all-knower anymore, but we have to create proper tools for them to use in the construction of their own knowledge. So it is not like giving the teacher the easy way, because we have to work hard in trying to select the proper material, but it is a very rewarding activity, and it is challenging for the teacher, but it is giving good results for me.
Thank you very much, Catherine. We need to move on. Okay. I'm so sorry, but I need to allow time for the other presenters. Okay. But we'll have a very nice coffee break later on, and I'm sure it will be very interesting and very rich.